Hey, it's Peter Morley, your patient advocate, and I'm so delighted to come to you during Healthcare Awareness Month with a very special guest, Senator Bob Casey, who has been an incredible voice in the US Senate for healthcare. And I am going to ask him a few questions and just want to let you know during the whole healthcare repeal times that can't believe we're beyond that. His voice was extraordinarily powerful, resonated deeply with me and with millions of Americans across the country. But we've now gone to the path of enhancing healthcare. And that is what the senator is currently working on. And the infrastructure bill was just passed in the Senate. And Senator Casey, can you please explain for those watching at home why these community-based services that you are trying to enhance are infrastructure?
Well, Peter, first of all, let me thank you for this opportunity to talk about this issue and also for your remarkable advocacy, so effective in the battle of 2017. And we need voices like yours more than ever, because now we're on the other side of this. Instead of trying to stop a bad repeal, we're trying to promote policy that frankly we've never had the chance to move forward in recent American history. As you know, the second part of what most people call infrastructure is in fact this next bill. And this bill will be a combination of investments in families and workers, seniors, people with disabilities. Too long a list to itemize. But one of the debates that some have engaged in is what is the definition of infrastructure? Well, we just had a bill passed that was what I call physical infrastructure. It was the roads and bridges and all of that. And that was good. It was bipartisan. And I'm happy that it took place. I'm happy that it's done and happy that Pennsylvania will benefit. But this is the part of the agenda that I'm going to be spending a lot more of my time on. I've been working on this part of the work we're trying to do on home and community-based services. We've been working on this for more than a year now. To take an existing system, which really limits the number of Americans with disabilities and seniors who can receive those services, and to expand greatly the services. So our Better Care, Better Jobs bill will make it possible for more than 3 million Americans to get services who are not receiving them now. Many of them on a waiting list. Many of them, especially folks with disabilities, have been on a waiting list for several years, if not longer. And that's just not consistent with American values, that we don't provide seniors and people with disabilities a real choice to have that care delivered and those services provided in their home or in the community. And it's also inconsistent with what we say are American values when we're paying people only $12 an hour to provide that kind of care and those kinds of services. So this is really an effort to lift up seniors, people with disabilities, and the workforce. And number four, or the fourth segment of the American population we're trying to help, are family caregivers. People who give up their careers and give up their lives to take care of a family member. We want to provide an option for them to get back to work so that they can rest assured while they are at work, there's someone at home helping a family member. And so some wanted to have a debate about whether this fits under the definition of infrastructure. I was more concerned about just getting it done. And if someone wants to engage in that debate, I can make about 25 different arguments as to why this is part of who we are. This is part of the infrastructure of our society. For so many Americans, the bridge to work might be a physical bridge, and it's good we're going to fix those. But that's not enough. For a lot of Americans, that bridge to work, especially women, that bridge to work is having someone that they can depend upon to take care of a child with a disability. For so many others, that bridge to work is the bridge of caregiving, the bridge of making sure their mom or their dad or someone in their family who's a senior has care at home that they can depend upon. So the bridge to work is not simply a physical bridge. It's part of who we are to allow people this option so that literally people can get to work. That's what this is all about. And we know this bill, in addition to adding probably as much as 3.5 million people to the list of those receiving this care, but the last two issues or the last two numbers I'd point to is 500,000 and about 1.5 million. 1.5 million people will get back to work, and 500,000 is the number of new caregiving jobs that will be created. And we want to make sure that those are high paying, and preferably, if a state would embrace this, and they will have incentives to embrace it, high paying union jobs.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I am like you. I believe that healthcare is infrastructure. It's broadband. It's PPE. It's hospitals. It's so
Right.
many things that we could spend so much time speaking about. But I want to also ask you. You mentioned the Better Care, Better Jobs Act. What would that do for home and community-based services nationwide?
Yeah, it's a good question, because a lot of people say, well, aren't these opportunities available now? And the short answer is somewhat. that if you live in a state that has applied for waivers over time and there's enough room in the funding, you might be able to get these services. But a lot of states don't have this, haven't provided this opportunity, and the funding is capped by definition, because this part of the caregiving landscape is not mandatory. For example, if you're a senior and you want to have care in a nursing home, and that's obviously widely available, Medicaid will help pay for your care in the nursing home. But in many states, it won't pay for your care at home. It's as simple as that. Or if it does, the slots are very limited and you have to wait years and years to get it. So what we're going to do is put federal money on the table. And I'm not talking about tens of billions. We need an investment of a few $100 billion. So it's new revenue that's on the table through Medicaid. Now, a state has to, in order to get those dollars, a state has to make very determined efforts. And we've got a list of things states have to do to get those dollars. But we started this, as you know, in the rescue plan, where we put $13 billion on the table, which was for the states, the matching rate of about 10%. And for a lot of states, it meant $90 million for this year, 100 million, 200 million, lots of money. What we want to do is just continue that. So they make the investment in home and community-based services. There are more slots available for folks to have this kind of care. And we want to make sure that states make very determined efforts as well to get the rates up. So when you get the rates up, you can increase the pay of those who are providing the care. The national average of pay for these direct care workers in these situations is, as I said, $12 an hour. But in a lot of states, it's $10 or $9 or $11. That is inconsistent with who we claim to be as Americans. We got to make this investment. And some will say, well, where do you get the money? Well, I'll tell you where you get the money. You go right to the tax code. And if we have to lift the tax rate on huge multinational corporations to pay for services at home for people with disabilities and seniors, that's what we're going to do. I know Republicans don't like it. Not a single one of them is helping us with this, but I don't really care right now. We're going to get this done with Democratic votes, a Democratic Senate and House, and a Democratic president.
Well, as somebody who has used community care in the past and will need it again in the future, thank you so much for doing this. It's so personal to me, and very close people to me have given up their time and their energy, and they have not been paid for this.
Yep.
So this is such an incredible wonderful thing that you're doing. I have another question for you.
Sure.
You know, being a patient advocate, what can we do in the what can we do in the advocacy space to help push the Better Care, Better Jobs Act across the finish line?
Well, I'll give you a simple answer, which you might not be surprised by. I'd say, Peter, keep doing what you have been doing. And I think that's true of a number of folks around the country, advocates who have been laboring in these vineyards, to use a scriptural reference, for many, many years, trying to expand healthcare, trying to expand services, trying to help caregivers, trying to help the workforce. So your advocacy is indispensable with regard to our efforts to get this done, to get better care, better jobs embedded into the larger piece of legislation we're working on now, which will cover, as I said before, many areas of policy. But the good news here is that the advocacy focus can be a little more narrow than usual. I wish I could say to you, well, get the attention of every member of Congress. But right now we're into what I would call short strokes, because we're engaged in a process now, because we passed the budget resolution. That's step one. Step two in September is to pass the budget reconciliation bill. And the reconciliation bill is the hard part, and the part that involves getting the policy right, funding it appropriately, all these priorities, and thirdly, to get the pay-fors. So when we talk about needing a few $100 billion to expand these services for so many Americans, seniors and people with disabilities, and using revenue from the tax code, that means we have to look to that corporate tax rate and other parts of the tax code to get the revenue. And so now we're at a point where, just in the Senate, we have to get 50 votes in the Senate. I've got 40 of them already, in the sense that they support, by way of their co-sponsorship, Better Care, Better Jobs. But we still have 10 Democratic senators we're still trying to convince. So we need to try to convince those 10 Democratic senators while the bill is being written. And when I say the bill, I mean the big bill, with home and community-based services, childcare, and so much else. So the bill is going to be written over the next couple of weeks. So we'll make sure that you know who those 10 are, so that that you and others can contact them. And depending on what states they're from, sometimes people within the state or advocacy organizations can be most effective. But it is a limited group of senators right now that we need help on this with. And then there's some House members as well, because they're going to have to pass it there too, but they're getting great support as well.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, it's, it's very personal to me. So I appreciate you working so hard on this. I've got one more question for you. How can we still advocate for home and community-based services without understanding the rules of the budget and Senate?
Yeah, I'd say this, Peter. You're an advocate, and you've been so determined and so effective in your healthcare, your advocacy for healthcare, and also your advocacy on this. And there are a lot of Democratic senators who aren't experts in the mechanics either. Good thing our staffs are. But what can happen, and I hope will happen, is that folks can just simply say, support Better Care, Better Jobs, Senate Bill 2210. That alone will focus the attention of the House member or the senator you're contacting, because they will know it's a bill, and they know, most of them know by now, this bill is part of the larger, or will be part of the larger piece of legislation. So you don't have to really even walk through the process, because advocating for that bill will direct the attention of the member of Congress. But it is a complicated process, because, as you know, in order to have this pass with 50 Democratic senators voting for it and Vice President Harris, we have to have it done by this budget reconciliation pathway. And the reason why we can do it this way and not have to worry about the 60 vote rule is because it is a budgetary matter. more than 40 years ago now, they passed legislation in Congress to allow this kind of bill to pass with less than 60 because it involves the budget. And so anything we put in this piece of legislation has to have a budgetary impact, just like we were able to do in the rescue plan, which was really in many ways the start of these kinds of investments in families. I'd say that lastly, this is really only the one time in 40 years, at least the way I read my history, one time in 40 years where powerful corporations and extraordinarily rich people didn't get help. In Washington, we passed the rescue plan. We basically said, we're going to direct the dollars to people that need the help, people with disabilities, seniors, workers, families that are trying to raise kids, people that are trying to keep their small business open. And that rescue plan was the first time that the power of Washington was turned on its head, where folks without a powerful lobbyist working for them actually won a big battle. So what we want to do is continue the investment in children that we began in the rescue plan, continue the investment in home and community-based services for people with disabilities and seniors. So I think we can get this done. And I think the most important thing that folks can share, in addition to the zeal of their advocacy, is to share their own story, just as you have shared your personal story, just as a group of mothers I was on the phone with today, a Zoom call with them, sharing the help that they need for their children with complex medical needs, who have multiple disabilities and need the kind of private duty nurse or a really capable caregiver available to them. And they're part of this, their stories are part of this effort as well.
You know, I've had 10 surgeries in 14 years. And, you know, my first thought after every surgery is, when can I go home?
Yeah.
So I just, you know, I happen to live in a state that, you know, you mentioned there are some states where there isn't a choice whether you are in a nursing home or whether you're at home. And I just can't even fathom not having that choice of being able to receive long-term care at home, because I just feel that your quality of life with your loved ones around you, it's so enriched. So I just can't even imagine that. So thank you so much for fighting for this extraordinarily important issue, and thank you for everything that you do. And I am so grateful that you are such a tremendous voice with healthcare. And, you know, we're just going to keep battling and keep fighting until healthcare is a right for every single American.
Peter, thank you. And your advocacy and your work on this is indispensable. We're grateful.